Welcome back to Vintage Story. I am now on 1.16.0, which is a stable release. And I wanted to talk to you today about the increasing sensitivity to temperature. And also at the end of this video, I'm going to put in a suggestion for Tyron to consider. First of all, in the recent updates, crops have been rebalanced. Some rebalancing is very straightforward. For example, you can see behind me there is a pumpkin field, and the growth time of the pumpkin plants has been doubled. Now, for some time, we've all been used to, let me dig myself out of a trench here, the difference in temperature of different crops, so that I've always divided mine into summer, winter, because they have different temperatures that apply to them. For example, the summer crops here will go from 8 degrees to 46 degrees. I mean, it's not all the same temperature, obviously. Onion seeds will go from -1 to 40. They're very versatile. Winter crops, less so. They will go from -10, which is much colder, up to 32. So basically there's a sort of, I've always divided it as a summer range and a winter range. Now these ranges have been slightly amended, and the whole crop growing mechanism has been rebalanced, and it is experimental. But there are other alterations that are going to affect all of us, and they're going to affect us quite substantially. For example, over here I have in here a very large bee installation. Now at the moment here the temperature is 26 degrees in June. It's not that warm a climate. The bees are all happily producing honey, they're swarming, it's a normal bee population. But in 1.16, bees no longer produce honey or swarm when it's 0 degrees or less. So, and if it goes less than that, they will reset, it says, which I'm not quite sure what resetting means. I think it means that they'll go back to a basic hive and you have to start growing them again. So bees are affected by this. So my bees go dormant in winter. Now I have the opposite problem with berries, because berries are basically they're a cold weather type of crop. And up till now you could plant berry fields anywhere and they would flower and produce fruit. Now look at this, ripen in 4 days, they're flowering, they're quite happy. No problem at all with my berries, except that if it gets to 30 degrees, they will go dormant. So let's just swap bases for a minute to a much hotter climate, and then we can see what the effect over there is. Right. We are in the middle of the rainy season here, but I had visions of, in this area, I'd planted berry bushes. Oh, they're all hidden up there. Let's go up and have a look. I'd planted loads and loads of berry bushes in lines so that I hoped that they would actually look like a vineyard. Although the wrong way round. Vineyards obviously go vertically up hillsides, but I had been very much hoping that I would get what I would call horizontal vineyards, and that is that I've got a whole line of blackcurrant bushes here, of red currant bushes, and of blueberry bushes, and they're all going to flower in 4 days, except that the temperature here is 40 degrees C. They are not going to reflower. They will not reflower until my temperature drops So basically, this whole area is not going to produce berries until the winter, which is fine because I'm running 2 bases. But not everybody is set up as I am to run 2 bases. Now, with the addition of fruit trees, my base is half built. I'm in the middle of building. Now, I've started finding and collecting fruit trees, and I've got one over here. Let's go and have a look at it. Now, fruit trees have turned out to be unbelievably susceptible to temperature. I've got an olive tree here, which is still alive. It's only got a 25% survival chance. Now, I had picked this base before 1.16 came in, and one of the reasons I'd picked it was that I thought it was a warm climate, but I didn't realise how hot it was going to get. I realised it was warm because obviously there's papyrus growing, there's kapok, there's vines, but it's not a jungle, it's not a desert. And I had assumed, rather falsely, that it was a reasonable climate, a sort of moderate climate. No such thing. I've moved bees in here, by the way, so that I can have bees that are producing honey and swarming during the winter. And the reason I've done that is that I do use beeswax for candles, obviously, but I also use it for trading. So, berries are going to be a winter crop here. Bees will be a summer and winter crop here because it's so hot. But my assumption was based on what I'd seen of this area. It was based on the temperature when I arrived, and it was totally wrong. Now, in the wiki, the lady who maintains the wiki, called Aki, has put the most superb guide to the different fruit trees. And she's also put a guide to what sort of temperatures they prefer. And it's quite startling because, I mean, as I said, I'm up to 40 degrees here. And that means that the only 2 trees I can grow in this area are olives and mangoes, because they will both be okay to 50 degrees. It looks to me as if the trees that are going to be most susceptible to minimum temperatures are, of course, mango, olive and orange. But even orange won't grow in my climate because it will stop growing at 30 degrees. Now, there's a whole guide to fruit trees in the wiki, which I would recommend. And it talks about vernalization. And this is what actually happens in real life. And it says that specific temperatures need to be reached and kept for a specific amount of time for the tree to actually flower and bear fruit. So really, it has to be in its temperature zone. So my reason for starting this area, when I heard that fruit trees were coming in, was to get acres and acres of land. I was going to cover this place with orchards. But that's not going to be the case for any of us guys, because, you know, trying to put orchards around here, obviously every bit of this terrain will have to be checked for temperature. I might have a warmer temperature up there, I might have a cooler temperature. There might be parts of this area that I can grow fruit trees in and other parts that I can't. It looks as if there might be a cooler temperature zone over there. But nonetheless, the temperature zone in which you are will determine what you can grow, and that will determine it for, obviously, it will determine it for plants, for your crops. It will determine it for berry bushes. It will determine whether your bees make honey and swarm. But the most sensitive of all, from what I can see, seem to be the fruit trees. It's bad enough that they only have a 25% chance of growing with one branch. But when you add to that, you've got to be particularly careful about temperature. Now, let's just get myself out of the rain. I am standing in the middle of a rain cloud. Let's just stand under here. Here we go. There we are. I feel myself getting wet and cold. So, looking at all this, what is my suggestion for Tyron? Well, if you press C, it's very, very helpful. This environment section, I think, is brilliant. It tells you what month you're in, the year, not so much. It tells me what time of day it is. It's just after midday. It tells me the outside temperature. It tells me what rainfall is like in this area. Common. That's very helpful with plants. Now that water no longer moisturizes 3 blocks to 100%, it moisturizes 3 blocks to 75, 50 and 25%. But also the latest one they've added is current rift activity calm. Now, my very strong suggestion is, because crops, berries, bees and particularly fruit trees are going to be subject to temperature, they're going to be highly sensitive to temperature. It seems to me that we ought to have a temperature indicator here. So maybe a temperature range for the area, because that must apply. It must be somewhere in the code. Or, you know, maybe we say something like hot, very hot, super hot. I don't know. But a temperature range added to this would save us all a lot of time and a lot of grief. For more experienced players like me, okay, I'm running between 2 bases. I know where to look. I'm well aware of dealing with temperature because I've been dealing with plants and temperature and the losses we suffer. I'm set up 2 bases so that I can run bees and berry bushes all year round. But I think for new players, and particularly when we're looking to set up a base, I had no idea what temperature range, apart from warm, that this climate was going to be. I had no idea it would get this hot. So I think that it would be very, very helpful to have that additional temperature indicator. So guys, I wish you the best of luck with the new crops and everything like that. And it all seems very complicated at the moment, but just as we got used to the different temperature variations in crops, this to me seems a very, very logical progression. It makes the game more complicated, more difficult, more dense, but more realistic. My dreams of endless orchards flowering the spring have sort of dissipated like mist into the distance. But I do hope that we can get a temperature range under our C button. Bye bye.